Hey everybody, welcome back. I am your host, Joe JDF Foster, and today I'm going to discuss the Police Academy movies. And the reason why I chose to discuss this is because, one, you can watch all the movies of Police Academy currently on Netflix at the time of this video being made. But also because in recent news findings I've found, it turns out that one of the stars from the original Police Academy, Steve Guttenberg, is actually trying to make it where him and some other members are wanting the franchise to either get another sequel or be rebooted, so to speak. Not really sure which way to describe how they're describing it, because they've described it in terms that fit both ways. Also, now, first of all, let's go with the three most interesting facts I found about. Three things I found really interesting about this, and the third one is going to be a personal opinion. But one of the biggest facts about this series is that one person actually did the movies as well as the TV series that ran. And that's Michael Winslow, a man. If you've seen the movie Spaceballs, if you saw the Police Academy movies, you recognize him as playing Jones in Dr. Monsignor Larvell Jones is how he introduces himself at one point in the original movie. But Michael Winslow in real life is known for doing a lot of roles where he does voices or imitates sounds from different things. And this can be seen throughout the entire Police Academy movies, as well as the TV series, from what I understand. I didn't watch the TV series, but it has been said that he did it in there as well, as he was playing the same character. One of the interesting things is Michael Winslow is the only actor to appear in both the TV series and all 7 movies that were made. And he was playing the same character in all of them. And now, as for the movies, they actually had there's 2 other actors who actually did all 7 movies. But they didn't make it into the TV series. But there were some who did the TV series that didn't make it in all 7 movies. Another interesting note about this is that these movies started in 1984 and ran till 1994, but that's because there was a big break between movie 6 and movie 7. And in my personal opinion, which is why this comes to number 3, this is one of the best known comedic movie franchises. The only things I think that would be a good rivalry for it are Monty Python movies, Ghostbusters, Gremlins, and then going way back, the Abbott and Costello films. And that's only certain ones of them. Now, on to some interesting facts about each of the movies. First, we're going to start with the 1984 original Police Academy. For those of you who haven't seen the movie franchise, the original Police Academy movie was about a bunch of collective misfits who decided that when the mayor the mayor of the city, which is unnamed in the entire series, the mayor decides the mayor wants to open up the community to all. For the Police Academy, wants it to be equal opportunity and that anybody can sign up. So they have to legally let them try out and go through the training, and those that survive it and make it the full amount of time, they're allowed. But what's interesting about this is that I don't think the mayor necessarily had the idea in mind that a collection of misfits were going to be brought in. First of all, in this list of misfits, Tackleberry, a guy who was that would be referred to nowadays as a gun nut, as the man knew every type of weapon. And actually, from what I found, is that Tackleberry actually became a very notable listing for a security type person who was oddly fascinated with all types of guns. It had vast amounts of knowledge on every type of gun. Basically what a lot of people, including myself, have referred to as a gun nut. If they're in the security business, would be called a Tackleberry. And it's actually based on this character, is how the movie is actually how the name came to exist, it turns out. I did not know this. I found this on multiple sources. This is the reason why I consider it to be confirmed. Second, the doctor, Monsignor Larvell Jones. He's a troublemaker who, when we're first introduced to him, is sitting in the police station and is asked what he did to get brought in. He takes a little item and makes a gunfire sound to it. But he's so good with his impressions that it actually sounds like a machine gun is going off in the police station, causing a mass panic in that little area at the time it happens. But he quickly becomes a good comic relief and is well known throughout the rest of the franchise for this reason, because he's so good with impressions and being able to imitate things, and it was great. Third on this group, and the main star for the first 4 films, Carrie Mahoney, who was played by Steve Guttenberg. Carrie Mahoney was a troublemaker. He was in and out of jail, basically. Well, in and out of trouble, anyways, not necessarily jail. But he's known for being he would be the class clown and the guy that's getting in trouble. But sometimes it actually was his own making, even though he didn't see it that way necessarily. And the whole reason he actually goes to the police academy is because it was the option given to him by a person at the jail who knew his father, who thought his father was a good cop, and he did it as a thing to keep him out of jail. He had this as an option. But it came with a stipulation. They could kick him out, but he couldn't quit, because the guy thought it'd be a good way to give him discipline and training. The problem is that he thinks he's going to get kicked out within like first 5 minutes there. And he ends up finding, 1, that he enjoys it, and 2, it is very hard to actually get kicked out of the police academy instead of just being able to quit. Another interesting fact about this movie, Michael Winslow, the guy who plays the character of Larvell Jones, he supplied voices for all the address announcements that were heard at the academy in the movie. And speaking of the academy, the location used for the academy in this movie, until 1911 was actually known as a lunatic asylum. Then it became known as Lake House Psychiatric Hospital from 64 until 79. From 79 to 91, it wasn't used for any type of hospital or medical needs, but was specifically used for filmmaking sites. In 1991, Humber College bought the place, and today the place is actually used. It was renovated, and it's active educational institution now. At least on the information I could find, that it still was. That it says that it was still active as one. Also, when attending the audition, Steve Guttenberg, who would later get the role that's considered to be the lead of Carrie Mahoney, when he was auditioning, he wore a police shirt that belonged to his father, who served as a New York City police officer. Marion Ramsey, who plays the character of Hooks, a small, stout woman who seems very meek, but yet she can have this loud voice. She actually admit that she came up with the voice by reading the script and seeing how it portrayed the character, and then remembering a time when she met Michael Jackson. And at the moment in the movie where she screams, "Don't move, dirtbag," she actually surprised the technicians because of this. Because they were used to the meek, quiet voice that she portrayed, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, it was so loud. Interesting fact about the first movie, it's the only movie in the franchise to receive an R rating. But it was also the most successful at the box office. Bubba Smith, former football player who turned actor, plays Hightower in this movie. He was the last member to actually be hired. Sorry, slight edge. He was the last member to be hired for the movie. They filmed it in 40 days. Commandant Lassard was actually originally written with Leslie Nielsen in mind to play the role. But this didn't happen, but the person who replaced him, who I've actually got listed later on, George Gaines, I think is his name. He actually took on the role and made it his own in the process, while actually keeping the idea of Leslie Nielsen in mind. And it was actually done really well. Although, with the way Commandant Lassard acts, I can see how they had Leslie Nielsen in mind, because it actually reminded me of the Naked Gun movies, and even the movie Airplane, where he played the doctor. Now on to movie number 2, Police Academy 2, The First Assignment. Came out in 1985, and it actually contains my favorite scene in the entire franchise, which is the opening scene with Jones, played by Michael Winslow, where he's sitting at a restaurant where this couple are talking about how they think how they were having this conversation. They talk about how something's no better than television, and then they talk about how each of them doesn't have this television and finds the TV is disgusting. Well, while they're eating, Jones decides to have a little fun with them. Makes it sound like her eating the hamburger is this really rough thing, and making it look like they basically, and how him drinking from this drink and eating a fry is really scrunching, really weird noise to it. But he does it in a way that it makes it appear that they have no manners, and ends up ruining their date in the process. But it was funny because of how it was done, and with how little was actually done to it. In this movie, there's a scene where Hooks, played by Marion Ramsey, punches the character of Proctor, who was, I forget who the actual actor is, but I probably got it written down somewhere later on. If I don't, I apologize. But the character of Proctor in this is supposed to get punched by Hooks. What they didn't count on is that when she went to hit him, she actually did hit the actor for real. And even though it was a complete accident, they kept it in the movie because of how realistic it was and how good it fit into the scene. Also, Bill Paxton, who many of you will remember from other 80s movies, such as the one I'm going to describe here, but also from Weird Science as the older brother, Chet. But in this movie, he was offered the role of Zed, the main antagonist in the movie. But he turned it down because it would require him to do future sequels if they came out with them. And he didn't think it was going to be a good movie, so he turned it down and did instead the sequel of a Sigourney Weaver movie known as Aliens. And I actually find that interesting because now I have to wonder if he actually kicks himself any because he turned that down and did Aliens rather than having a chance at a future movie that was actually considered good with the sequel, with the movies that had this character in it. Bubba Smith, who plays Hightower, as I stated earlier, states that he made more in this film alone than he did in 10 years, a full decade, of playing professional football. And he states that this was mainly due to the fact that he got 2% of the movie profits rather than taking a higher salary prior to the starting of filming for the movie. And also, there's an error that was done in the movie that was left in, and that's the character of Sweet Chuck, who, as it turns out, that's not actually his name, and you can see it if you watch in the movie when it shows his store that the character owns. It's actually called Shoe Chuck, and it was named after the original movie's set director. However, they changed the name to Sweet Chuck because Bubba Smith kept messing up the name when he'd say it in the lines. So they decided to keep it as Sweet Chuck, and it actually stayed this way for a long time. And another interesting fact is that the characters of Zed and Sweet Chuck are shown to hate each other, but the actors who played them are actually really great friends in real life. Something that's a nice little thing about this movie, and I'm going to admit this is a spoiler, so you might want to skip ahead a little bit if you don't want to know this. But in the movie, they've got Bigfoot, number 3 in the movie. Most people just know it as Bigfoot and just recognize it because of how it was, which was a famous monster truck. And the reason why it's called Bigfoot 3 is because it was the third one of that particular one made. And that ends this part. Now on to Police Academy 3, Back in Training. Came out in 1986. Tends to be the year I was born, though I don't think it came out in January. But anyways, Bobcat was almost fired from this movie. Well, anyway, okay, here I'll go back. But with Police Academy 2, as the movie states, it was their first assignment. They actually had to bring down a gang. Police Academy 3 is known as Back in Training, which came out in 1986, and as I said, pretty sure it wasn't the month I was born, though. But anyways, Bobcat, who plays Zed from the second movie, has, well, the idea of Back in Training is that Commandant Lassard's school, along with this other school, this other police academy, are going to end up having a competition with some people over with like big wigs looking over them. And the one they think is worse will be closed down. Well, Bobcat got recruited in. I mean, Bobcat's character turned over a new leaf, became a good guy, and he was going through the training now. And he actually got roomed with his buddy Sweet Chuck from the second one, even though the two characters hated each other. But Bobcat, the actor playing Zed, was almost fired from the movie because he recommended the villains should be the same ones that appeared earlier in the film, and he even stated his reasons why, and they were actually logical sense. In an interview, he actually stated, "I was almost thrown out of the academy for trying to introduce plots." On Howard Stern's radio show, Bobcat did an interview with him there, and he stated that he negotiated a $600,000 deal to return to do this movie. And he also suggested that they paid the actor playing Sweet Chuck the same amount to return. And at first he was worried, but it turns out they actually agreed with him and agreed to pay the full $600,000 for both actors, and pay what would come out to $1.2 million for both actors to return for this movie. Early in this movie, and this ain't a spoiler, this is actually stated in the movie early on, Proctor refers to this plan that they come up with as Operation Fiasco. Well, in deleted footage, it actually reveals what Fiasco stands for. It stands for, the full name of the operation is Operation First Intramural Academy Sabotaging Covert Operation, or Operation Fiasco, taking the first letters of each word. This would also be the... Something I left out is that Police Academy 2 would be the first movie not to feature Harris in it. But anyways, now on to movie 4, which came out in 1987, which was Police Academy 4, Citizens on Patrol, where they decided to have community awareness and make it where the community could get involved and help out. Well, rather than recruiting and having them go through the police training and become policemen, it was kind of like a backup plan that still should take care for the community, but gave the community somewhat of a right to react as somewhat like police. The name of the program was going to be Citizens on Patrol, or COP. Hence the name of the movie. Something I didn't remember about this movie, probably because she actually looked different than I remember, is that Sharon Stone's actually in this movie. It turns out she decided to do this movie because she had just had her first marriage ended, and she wanted to have some fun. And she actually stated, hanging out with a group of comedians, it was the best therapy that there ever was for her. This is also the final appearance of the Asylum, which had been used in the first, third, and fourth movie, and this movie. Also, little known fact, this was the film debut of David Spade, who would play a skateboarder who was causing trouble. Most people would probably remember David Spade from later in the 90s and 2000s, as he did the movie Tommy Boy with SNL star Chris Farley, where he played the character of Richard, who was forced to work with Chris Farley's character, Untitled Chapter. There was the second movie I had on my list, where he played the title character of Joe Dirt. Disney fans would remember him from The Emperor's New Groove, where he played Emperor Kuzco, who in the movie is turned into a llama. And other movie fans like me would remember him from a 90s movie known as PCU, where he played Rand McPherson, the antagonist in the movie. It's a good movie overall, and I highly recommend it, but I'll get back to what I was doing now. Also, this is the last movie to feature the Blue Oyster Bar, which I'm trying to figure out the proper way to say this without it sounding wrong, but it was kind of like but I guess the actual statement would be it was a gay bar. Or at least an 80s ideal joke of a gay bar. Though I may be wrong. Like I said, I do not know for certain. I have not been in any gay bars, so I do not know this. But from what I can tell, that was supposed to be the idea, is that it was supposed to be a gay bar. According to G.W. Bailey, who plays Captain Harris in any movies in which the character of Harris Plate is in the franchise, the incident involving the German Shepherd in this movie, which is a funny scene actually in the way it's done, almost resulted in an accident. as the dog was supposed to gently nuzzle him in his lower regions. But the dog wound up getting a little more aggressive than it was supposed to be. Nothing happened, but but Bailey states that it was a very close call in this area. This movie would also be Guttenberg's final appearance in the franchise until it was announced way later, like recently, that he would want to return for an for the eighth movie, or what many are considering to be the reboot of the series, if it actually does get made. Also, Police Academy 4 had the highest budget of all the Police Academy movies. Number 5, now on to movie 5, which is Police Academy 5, Assignment Miami Beach, which came out in 1988. Guttenberg what's interesting is, though Guttenberg's fighting now to return to the Police Academy movies, when this movie came around, he actually turned down the movie and any upcoming sequels that were to happen. 20 years later, he stated that he regrets turning down the chance and was among the people who were wanting to make another Police Academy movie now. When the fourth movie, when Citizens on Patrol was made, there's a critic who's considered to be very mean, is how I'm going to say it. I ain't really sure what the proper term for that would be in his case. But no, the critic's name is Rex Reed. Reed swore, they make another Police Academy, I'll lead the business. This was an actual quote by him. By the person. The director for this movie, Melansky, stated that at the time, this was one of the reasons he made Police Academy 5, expecting Rex to keep his word. Unfortunately, Rex broke his word and stayed on as a critic, despite the fact that they made another movie. Also, the original script stated that if Guttenberg had returned as Mahoney, they were going to promote him at the end of the film to be Lieutenant Mahoney instead. This is also where actor Matt McCoy comes into the franchise as the character of Nick, which is the nephew of Commandant Lassard. And speaking of that, Nick makes the fourth member of the Lassard family to be in this movie. There's the Commandant Lassard, his wife, who appears in the first one, Captain Pete Lassard, who is a cop in the city, who is the brother to Commandant Lassard, who's in the second movie. But Matt McCoy makes the fourth as Nick Lassard, who's supposed to be the nephew to Commandant Lassard, but actually makes me wonder how big Lassard's family was that he's the nephew, and you got and Lassard already has a brother that lives in New York as a cop. It lives in that they work with, that's a captain, and then you got Captain Pete Lassard, you got Commandant Lassard. Makes me actually wonder how he's the nephew, if he's actually Pete's son, or if he was another member of the Lassard family's son. Which is why, but we know he's not Commandant, as he is the nephew. Anyways, moving on. In the movie, Captain Harris, played by G.W. Bailey, is seen polishing an armadillo, which is the official state mammal of Texas, which is actually where actor G.W. Bailey, who plays Harris, is actually from. So I thought this could have been seen as an interesting nod towards him. Also, there's a character in the movie known as Tony, who in the script is revealed his full name is Tony Stark. However, the people decided to drop using the last name after it was found out that Marvel had the trademark for Tony Stark for the character of Iron Man. That they actually had a registered trademark on it. And remember, this is this is almost 20 years before the original Iron Man movie starring Robert Downey Jr. was made. Anyways, and that takes. But in Police Academy 5, the idea is that they are going to Miami Beach because Commandant Lassard has reached the mandatory retirement age. And they're deciding to give him this big send-off type deal. Type ceremony to thank him for his years of service. Unfortunately, there's a diamond theft that occurs and some incidents occur. Usual zany comedy. Where Lassard ends up with the bag containing the diamonds, and they end up with his bag. So now they need to get him and the diamonds. And so now the criminals need to get the diamonds in order to complete their deal. Okay, in 1989 came number 6, Police Academy 6, City Under Siege. I said this movie came out in 1989. Brian Seaman, who plays the character of Flash in this movie, was actually a trained gymnast, and the people in charge actually allowed him to perform a number of his own stunts. So, a lot of those fancy things that occur in the movie featuring the character of Flash were actually Brian basically showing off how good he was. And in this one, there's a crime wave that hits a certain area of the city, and now they're trying to figure. Sorry. Let me back up a little bit. The plot summary for City Under Siege is that there's a crime wave that started hitting the city, and there's these people robbing a certain area. Well, it turns out they're robbing along this one certain area, and there's a reason for it. And the nice little Police Academy people are now trying to stop this crime wave in order to help the mayor out, so that they can end the crime wave, get all the people restored, all that good stuff. But now back to the interesting facts. In the movie, the mayor constantly forgets words, stumbles over his lines. This is actually improvised by the actor Kenneth Mars, who plays the mayor in the movie. It was not actually in the script originally. Another interesting fact about City Under Siege is that this is the return of Bigfoot to the movies. To the Police Academy franchise. As the last time it was seen was earlier when Bigfoot 3 was used. But anyways, the idea, in this one it was Bigfoot 6, but again, the name just gets made into Bigfoot. And it was the first appearance of first return of the Bigfoot to the Police Academy since the second film. Sorry, I lost track of my notes there for a minute. I actually had this wrote down and completely forgot. Also, this was the first Police Academy movie not to place first in the U.S. weekend box office on its release date. Also, it grossed less than $11 million and is considered to mark the end of the series. Another interesting thing that people might like to know, if you saw the series Smallville, the actress who played Chloe, this is actually her film debut in movies. Even though it's a minor part in the movie, I thought it was just a little interesting fact. Also, this would be the last time you see Harris work with Proctor, as he would go sidekickless. Well, what I refer to as sidekickless, or without a sidekick, in Mission to Moscow for the first time since the original movie. Something I didn't know, because I never saw the box art or the poster art for this movie, because I only saw it on TV, is that this was the first time, I'm sorry, not the first time, this was the only time the character of Proctor was featured on the art for the Police Academy movie. Also, now I got another interesting fact, but it pertains also with the next movie, which is Mission to Moscow, which came out in 1994. And it's the 7th movie. According to Bubba Smith, Marion Ramsey, who plays Hooks, called him up and asked why she wasn't in the film, and she was crying because she wasn't. Well, he knew how much she needed the money because he'd given her a loan recently and knew it wasn't enough. So he called them up, asked if they could bring her into the film, and the writers and everybody said that it wasn't possible. So in defense of his friend, Bubba Smith actually dropped out of the movie, and they had to replace a lot of scenes that he was in with other actors in the movie doing those scenes. Also, this is the only time George Gaines, who played Lassard, was given top billing in a film, as previously Steve Guttenberg or Bubba Smith had gotten it. But due to both of them not being in the movie, he got it. This was also a direct-to-video release rather than it actually going into theaters, like the previous films had. Ron Perlman did this movie as the antagonist. Well, it turns out he worked on this movie. He considers what he did on this movie to be a public service, as after this, the movies were shut down for over 20 years. And he's actually stated in an interview, and I'm going to change one part because he actually swore during it. I'm not going to apologize. I did that piece of crap. Like I said, he swore in it. I was trying to be nice and edit it down. Also, the director, Alan Mater, I ain't sure. I want to say Matter's his name, but I'm probably mispronouncing that, stated that he is only a fan of the original Police Academy movie. Which means he didn't even like his own work, if it was that bad, if that's the only movie he enjoyed. G.W. Bailey was brought on last minute after... Okay, the guy who plays Captain Harris was brought on after Bubba Smith, plays Hightower, dropped out. Like I said, and that's what led to a lot of rewrites occurring in the movie because of the guy who plays Hightower, Bubba Smith, dropping out of the movie in defense of his friend. And majority of people, myself included, actually consider this the worst film in the whole franchise. Also, this was the first movie since the original to not feature Proctor. And also since the first time that Harris is working alone in the movie. But, and this was a major interesting fact, Mission to Moscow is the only movie in the Police Academy movie franchise in the sequels that did not have the number in the movie's title, as 2 through 6 all had their numbers before they gave the subtitles such as First Assignment, Citizens on Patrol, or City Under Siege. Oh, and I remember that fact from earlier. David Graff, who plays Tackleberry, George Gaines, who plays Commandant Lassard, were two people who did all 7 movies, but did not make it to the TV series. Now, I'm going to give you my order. Well, anyway, I'm sorry, I'm going to back up, because I just realized I forgot to give you guys the plot summary behind Mission to Moscow. The idea is that there's this video game that's come out from Russia that's become an addiction. But what's interesting is it started by a person who was to be alleged mobster type character and plotting some type of overthrow of the Russian government. They're fearing that he's going to try and overthrow the Russian government with this game, but that it was going to somehow lead to that. So they invite from the U.S. somebody they trust, Commandant Lassard and his crew, to come over and help them out. Also, this brought in a new character, as the character of Nick that had been in the 5th and 6th movie was not in this one. Instead, it brought in a new guy. I forget his name. And his character's name as well. But he's very knowledgeable, but not really... not really as open as Nick and Mahoney's characters were. He's also not as much as getting in trouble as they were. But in the movie, there's a character who apparently got picked for this mission originally, who's named Webster. Well, it turns out his name is actually from the Webster's Dictionary. But the new character who was brought in thought it was unfair and that this guy wasn't really well suited to being a cop just because he got good grades or because he did this. He just did what he did to be mean. So he got it to where it was switched, where he was actually put on to the mission instead. Which is petty, but in the movie overall, it actually makes sense later on for what happens. But anyways, now I'm going to give you my order of the movies by favorites. By the ones I like, starting with the ones I like the least and going to the one I like the most. Lowest on this list, number 7, Mission to Moscow. It was the last movie, it was least liked, and I very well agree with the fact that it was truly the death of the franchise. Number 6 on my list is actually number 5, The Assignment Miami Beach. Which, by the way, the Mission to Moscow and Assignment Miami Beach are the only 2 movies to actually have locations listed in the title, or where the film is supposed to be taking place. Also, it turns out Wilson Heights, which is the main where the crime wave is taking place in number 6, is actually a real place. Just not the place that the movie was using. But Assignment Miami Beach and Mission to Moscow were both actually the only movies to mention where they were actually taking place at in the films, as well as give the actual location in the movie, as well as the title. But Miami Beach, while it's a little better than Mission to Moscow, it was a lot more boring. It was pretty boring in its own right. And I think it's because I probably got used to Guttenberg being there so much that the new guy, to me, that plays Nick, Matt McCoy's his name. He just didn't live up to expectations, and it lost a lot of humor by this time. And some of the stuff you could see coming a lot more than you did before. Number 5 is the second movie, Police Academy 2, Their First Assignment. The only reason this one doesn't rank high on my list is because while it had its good moments, it was just long. To me, it was longer than it needed to be. They drew out the story too much and tried to make too much happen. And made the movie boring to me in that way. They didn't follow what they did in the original movie, and it ruined it. Number 4 on my list is the 6th movie, City Under Siege. While many hate this movie and consider it to be the death of the to be the end of the franchise, which I will agree it should have been the end of the franchise. Let them have that note and that be it. And it may not have been as wildly entertaining as some of the previous films. This one had its moments that lived up better in its sense of humor, but also McCoy seemed a lot more like he was actually enjoying his work in the role in this movie, and the sense of humor with it just moved along nicely when it hit. Excuse me. Plus, Michael Winslow, great in this movie. Number 3 is actually the 4th movie in the series, Police Academy 4, Citizens on Patrol. What made this one work for me so well is that it showed the police working with the regular people, and it's like it went back to the original's idea of trying to bring in the sense of humor rather than sticking to, oh, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, and try to build around the story and get too focused on that and ruin it. Instead, it had the story, but it had its sense of humor moments that actually worked better for it. Number 2 on the list, Police Academy 3, Back in Training. With this one, it's like they were trying to go back to the first one, but they kept in mind that the second movie, their first assignment, had happened, and everything couldn't be exactly the same, but you could still keep elements that seemed lost and make up for it at the same time. Such as the characters of Zed and Sweet Chuck being brought back for this movie and giving it that extra little kick of comedy. While again, you had Winslow, Mahoney, and Hightower, who were all funny, and Hooks, very funny. Also, this one brought in characters that weren't seen as much, but they were good, such as Nagata, who originally, instead of an Asian, well, I want to say if I remember, they actually list him as being a Japanese character. He's from the Tokyo Police, the transfer who comes in to the movie, and they send him to Lassard's because your rival police academy didn't think that they needed to be teaching somebody from a foreign nation how to be a police officer. They didn't think it was right. And they actually used something that, to me, sounded a little bit racist in the way it was said. But Nagata is actually a hilarious character in his own right when you watch it. Which also made a lot of enjoyable. Also, the one that was number 3 on my list, the Police Academy 4, Citizens on Patrol. A fact I left out earlier that I actually forgot, and that's the reason why I left it out. I actually forgot about it. Tony Hawk is actually in this movie as one of the skateboarding friends for David Spade and his buddies. And number 1 on the list, you can't beat the original. This movie set out to be a comedy. It set out to parody police officers and the training and everything they do, but at the same time, it was respectable in the way it was done. It showed closeness between officers, the ability to help each other, and how people can actually become friends rather than being against each other throughout the movie. And how sometimes the unlikeliest of heroes will show, but the unlikeliest can be a criminal to some extent. What was your favorite Police Academy movie and why? Leave me a comment. And also, what you would like for me to do for an upcoming video. As I've stated, I've looked at the comments. I like seeing what people have to say, and it makes things fun. And your ideas could actually help me to come up with something better to discuss in the process. And if I actually take your ideas, I will give you credit for it. Because I do believe that people deserve the right to be heard, but they also deserve to be credited for their contributions. So like I said, leave a comment on something you think I should discuss, and if I do, I will be sure to give you credit for it. But that has been my time on Police Academy, and I'm out.